Been laying down for hours now. It's 5:35 a.m. and there's not much I can do. Know what the worst part about my situation is? You won't stop looking at me.
Hey, ghoul friends, welcome to the Freaky Films podcast. I'm Doll.
And I'm Em. We got some creepypasta stories for you today. This one's actually pretty chilling. Doll did a good job finding one. I'm excited to read it for you guys.
And with that
All
said,
right.
also, before we get into that, you know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, rate our Spotify podcast. Also, with that, when she was talking about that, if you guys have creepypastas or scary stories you would like us to read, you can send them to our email or your experiences at thefreakyfems@gmail.com.
You can also comment on our Spotify. You can reach out to us on Instagram, which is also the Freaky Femmes, as well as Facebook, which is also the Freaky Femmes. You can message us or you can comment. Send us your stories or suggestions. We would love to hear from you. And you can also send us voice messages of your stories, and we can play them on the podcast if you have any. Okay, that being said, let's jump in. I've been laying down for hours now. It is 5:35 a.m. and there's not much I can do. You know what the worst part about the situation is? I'm in the same room with my parents. They keep looking at me. I can't help but look back and try not to cry or scream. Their eyes are focused on me. Their mouths are wide open. There's a strong scent of blood, and I'm paralyzed with fear. Here's the thing. The second that I make a hint that I'm not asleep anymore, I'm completely screwed. I will die, and there's nobody around to save me. I've been trying to think of a way out, but the only idea I have is to rush for my bedroom door, run outside the front door, and scream for help, hoping that any neighbors hear me. It's risky, but if I stay here, I will surely die. He's waiting for me to wake up and see his masterpiece. You're probably wondering what's going on. I do get ahead of myself sometimes. About 3 hours ago, I heard screaming from the other side of the house. I got up and went to check on the noise and realized that I had to use the restroom. Instead of doing the smart thing and investigating, I used the bathroom first. Could have gotten myself killed right then and there. My stupid actions. But I actually did my business and took a peek outside of the bathroom. There was blood on the carpet. I got very worried and ran back to my room. I hid under my sheets like the pansy I was. I tried to convince myself to go back to sleep, that it was just some really vivid dream or something. I heard my bedroom door open. Like the terrified child I was, I peeked from under the blankets to see what was going on. I could see someone dragging my dead parents into the room. Whatever it wasn't human. I can tell you that. It was hairless, with no eyes and no clothing. Nosferatu! Walked like a caveman, with his back slouched as it dragged my parents. This thing was much smarter than any caveman. It was aware of what it was doing. It propped my dad on the edge of the bed and made him face me. Then it sat my mother down in the chair and positioned her towards me as well. After that, it started rubbing its hands on the walls, staining them with blood. And then drew a circle with a pentagram in it. To finish it off, it scribbled a message on the wall that I couldn't read in the darkness. It then positioned itself under my bed, waiting to strike. The scariest thing is now my eyes have adjusted to the darkness since then, and I can read the message on the wall. I want to look at it because it is terrifying to think about. I feel the need to see. Before I'm killed, I peek at the creature's masterpiece. I know you're awake.
Dun, dun, dun. Jinx, I was thinking the exact same thing. Now let's just give an applause for M. Because wowie wow wow. Oscar, Oscar. Is there Oscar for podcast reading? I don't know.
So, doll, what did you think of that story?
Those are my favorite types of stories. As you already know, I said I love stories where there's a little twist ending or there's a thing that you're like, sometimes you're expecting it, sometimes you're not, but I'm like, I love to know that like all that's being said isn't all that there, all that there is, that they're like leaving a little tiny thing at the end. And I love when it's like the last line of the story. It's like ends on something because it feels so much better as a closer than just being like how some stories end, like we've read before. It's like, I'm going to leave you like the last line is it's called the twist. I just really like that. So
Me too. And I was like, I'm thinking about like, what does it look like? It had no eyes, no skin, no hair. Okay, up next, I have a story for you called Mr. Smile. It was early November of 1997 that a series of very strange sessions led to a child psychologist in Maine to contact the authorities. It began when a patient of his began to tell him about one of their friends. Just in parentheses.
friends.
I don't know why I said that. I'm just thinking of SpongeBob as like twins.
Only closer.
This friend being imaginary, as far as both the psychiatrist and the boy's parents were concerned, called his friend Mr. Smile. Would talk about him in great length during some sessions. The boy called him Mr. Smile both because he would always be smiling, because when he was around, the boy said something felt happy. He said that there was a feeling of everything being okay. The boy in question was being treated for serious issues to do with his anger and depression, but when Mr. Smile was around, he said that all the anger and sadness seemed to just disappear. He said that Mr. Smile wouldn't speak, but rather just stand there at the foot of his bed. He smelled like candy floss, and just by being there, he made the boy feel calm and safe. The psychiatrist assumed this imaginary friend was just some sort of coping mechanism the boy had developed to deal with the problems at home that led to his violent temper, and thought nothing much of it until another patient, a girl about 9 years old, also began talking about her imaginary friend named, you guessed it, Mr. Smile. And then a boy of 7, and then a boy of 12, and then a girl of 11. All in all, close to 15 separate patients all began to talk about Mr. Smile. First view he'd put down to coincidence. After all, many children have imaginary friends. The name and description of Mr. Smile were just generic enough that it didn't concern him too much at first. But as more and more of his patients told him about Mr. Smile, he began to grow concerned. He asked for more details. Every single one of them described him the same way. using the exact same words. Now there was no way that all of these children could be in contact with each other. Five of them, for instance, were currently being homeschooled, and according to their parents, when he spoke to them, they never really even left the house, except for when accompanying them on shopping trips. There was no way that every single one of these kids could have rehearsed or prepared their statements together, which led him to a deeply disturbing conclusion. He spoke with each of the children's parents one at a time. He avoided disclosing too much information, but told them that something troubling had creeped up in multiple sessions with various patients and that he believed that there was a chance their child was at risk. He asked for their permission to discuss matters with the authorities, and the parents gave their consent, provided they were kept in the loop as to what was going on. And so, over the course of the next week, the police came and talked to the children about their friend. Okay. They asked for details about his appearance, which they couldn't seem to describe apart from the smile, and that he was not like them. How he got into their house, anything he said or did while he was there. Because by the point of the psychiatrist, the parents and the police were all convinced that Mr. Smile was quite real and quite dangerous. The authorities had checked to make sure that there were no known predators living in the area, which they had confirmed. Huh?
Sorry, I said when I heard predators, they think it's a predator
I mean, maybe if it's like
visiting the
going after
children. Yeah, that's
kids, yeah, visiting
terrifying. That's
children.
terrifying.
Might be a guy in an ice cream truck, you know?
Yep.
Want some ice cream? But they said he never talks. But they said he stands at the foot of their bed. But I mean, he could be like breaking into houses. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm curious of where this is gonna go.
me too.
The authorities had checked to make sure that there were no known predators living in the area, which they had confirmed there was not in that case. It was quite clear that, however, Mr. Smile was a very real person who had been sneaking into homes of these children at night. One of the children claimed to know how he got in. They said they would just wake up and he'd be there at the foot of his bed. Sometimes they said he would be singing something, but not in English. Oh, it sounded like a lullaby, they said, and it made them feel safe. Finally, the children were asked to draw Mr. Smile, as they couldn't put into words how he looked. Each and every one of the children picked up a red crayon, proceeded to color in the entire page until it was just a rectangle of red. When asked about this, they insisted that they had drawn Mr. Smile. When asked where his head, arms, and legs were, they would just insist that they had drawn those. Claimed that they had drawn a perfect picture of the man at the foot of their bed, and when they were told that they had simply colored in the page and did not draw anything at all, they became deeply angry, feeling that they were being accused of lying and insisting that what they had drawn was a picture of the man they had seen. Acting more on a hunch than anything else, the psychiatrist decided to show one of the colored in rectangles to the various children and ask them what it was. Each and every one of them, with no knowledge of what the picture was supposed to be or who had drawn it, and with no knowledge that other children that had been spoken to about the subject even existed, replied that it was a picture of Mr. Smile.
This makes me think. I wonder if there's an actual picture of Mr. Smiles. I bet there is. We could probably find it. Just like Smile Dog. Oops! I hit my I hit my table. So I'm gonna have to look for that. I'm gonna look for that image.
Okay. Cameras and baby monitors were placed in children's rooms so that they could be monitored. Many of the parents simply stopped sleeping altogether, staying up all night staring at the screens that displayed where their children slept. At no point did anyone enter or exit the rooms. No sounds except them snoring or occasionally talking in their sleep were heard over the baby monitors. There was no sign of Mr. Smile. After almost 2 weeks, many of them began to doubt that Mr. Smile had ever existed. Other psychiatrists since have put the whole thing down to some strange shared delusion that, while it couldn't be explained, yet did not have any basis in reality. Some suggested that maybe this whole Mr. Smile thing had its basis in a TV show or a film that the children all had watched, leading them to dream up something similar. Then one of the boys went missing. Dun, dun, dun. Cameron in his room had gone dead around 2 in the morning. Mother had run to check in on him only to find his room empty. It had literally taken her less than a minute to run to his room. There was no possible way for him to leave, be taken, be out of her sight in the time it took her to leave her bedroom and run towards his, but he was gone. She said there was a smell like cotton candy in the room, which the kids said that. They said he smelled
Yeah.
like candy floss, which candy floss is another name for cotton
On
candy.
Australia.
The search for the boy turned up nothing. No one had seen anything strange or unusual around the home before, during, or after the disappearance, and no trace of him was ever found. Less than a week later, that one of the girls who had spoken of Mr. Smile vanished as well. Then another of the boys. One by one, each of them began to disappear until only 4 remained. The 4 remaining children began to talk about how Mr. Smile and his friends were going to take them away soon. When asked about these friends, they talked about how Mr. Smile lived with the other smiling men in the happy place. I know, I'm so curious where this is gonna go.
There's more.
And that, no, and that he would take them there soon. He said that there were lots of people there already, and that in the happy place everything was beautiful. He said that they knew about it because Mr. Smile talked to them in their heads. Actually, in their minds. Well, I guess it's a kid, so it can be in their heads. Because he couldn't talk like other people did, and he would show them pictures in their heads of the place they were going. Things began to get increasingly disturbing. After a few weeks, the children began complaining of headaches and nausea. Their schools reported that they had begun to suffer hallucinations, and 2 of them started complaining that they didn't like the place that Mr. Smile was showing them anymore. One began screaming for half an hour, acting as if they were having a fit, screaming for colors to stop, and the colors were horrible, and that they needed them to go away. One of the children claimed that Mr. Smile was talking to them in their heads all the time now, and was telling them things, horrible things, that they couldn't talk about it. They mustn't, because their parents would know about the horrible things too. The psychiatrist asked them to write down what Mr. Smile was saying, promising that he would show it to no one, managing to gain the trust of one of the boys enough that he agreed. Contents of the book were known only to him and the authorities. Whenever anyone involved was asked about it, they would just get quiet real quick. and quickly find an excuse to change the subject. The children stopped sleeping. The footage from the security cameras showed them sitting upright, eyes unblinking, just staring at the wall without moving or making a sound. Sedatives did nothing. One of the girls began cutting strange circular marks into her skin, while two of the boys ceased communicating in English altogether. The language they spoke was never identified, and despite numerous people being asked to listen to them, they could not translate what they were saying. The start of 1999, all four of the children had vanished into thin air. It was like 3 years
Wow.
in the making. It started in 97. There was no trace of who took them. Searches had turned up nothing to this day, with no indication of where they are and if they were even dead or alive. No suspects have been found either. All four of them appeared to simply vanish into thin air, much like the others, all of whom also remain missing, their disappearances unexplained.
Well,
What'd you
well,
think?
well. I liked it because it was more in depth. I guess it's from the, you know, of the psychiatrist's point of view or the doctor's point of view. I like
Mm-hmm.
that thing, like someone telling of all this. Kind of reminds me of like the Small Dark JPEG where they're telling a story of someone else, though that one turned. I like the
Mm-hmm.
way this was written.
I did too. I was like, this one's actually written pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever wrote it. Her
Unlike
name's
our other
Alice
ones, I'm going to look
something.
up. I guess it's called Mr. Smiles. Is that's what the name of this one's called?
Mr. Smile, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Smiles creepypasta. Okay, let's look at the image. Oh, I know him. Oh, okay. I know the picture. I've never heard the story, but I know this picture. So I'm gonna send it to you. Are you ready?
All
Get ready
right.
for the jump scare. And we'll input it for you guys to see. It's not like Smile Dog, so we're not gonna give you a warning. We're just gonna flash it on screen and just gonna have to look at it.
And with that being said, we did have a few people comment their stories on our Spotify that we're going to read for you. The first one is from William Graham, 1776. He said, "One time I had sleep paralysis and I heard the song Amazing Grace playing, and a distorted face kept flashing in my vision, like the faces from the Walton Files," which I think we looked that up
Yeah,
one of our episodes ago, and they're creepy.
yeah. We
So
can
I can
show a
imagine
picture
that'd
on
be
the screen.
terrifying. And my dream catchers were like glitching out. But I eventually stopped having it after taking the dream catchers down. So, Will, it is terrifying. And it sounds like it was attached to your dream catchers, which I feel like dream catchers are supposed to protect you from that,
Yeah,
but it doesn't sound like those were. Maybe they were cursed.
yeah.
I hope that you have not had that experience again. And thank you so much for sending us your story.
And on that note,
Don't forget to lock your doors and check your windows.
and if something goes bump in the night, make sure to close your eyes tight.